Hello guys, and today I'm in Kerbal Space Program, and what we're gonna do today is build a space station, and it's called the Alexandre Space Station, also known as the, I can't say that word, but yep, it's the Alexandre Space Station, or also known as the I can't say that word on YouTube. So yep, just that, and it's really hot in my room, so I'm gonna go turn on the air conditioning, so just wait a second. I'm back, and the aircon is on, like that I don't die. And here we are now building the space station, and I sped it up 5 times, and I don't want to skip the build part, because it's quite interesting, but if you do, then skip to like some coordinates, like a time thing. I probably put that, so yep, just skip there if you don't want to see the time lapse. So here we are now, building the space station. It's gonna have artificial gravity rings, 2 artificial gravity rings. This is because we need 2, because one of them will be spinning clockwise, the other one will be spinning anti-clockwise, and basically they will cancel out each other's torque. Because if we only had one, then the space station would start spinning, but if we have 2, then they cancel out each other's torque and the space station stays free. And I decided to use a special, like the weird exploit that's in Kerbal Space Program, to make large artificial gravity rings, and they are, I think it's 36-way symmetry. So as you can see here, I'm putting 6 octagonal struts around a rotor, then I placed 6 other struts around one strut, and then put these outermost struts onto the 6 original struts. And basically what this causes is basically to, like, the game just like thinks that I'm multiplying everything, so it's gonna basically do 6 times 6, which is 36. So there we go. Now I had to rebuild these rings, as you can see, but I'm not gonna include that because they have the same sizes. Everything is the same. It's just that for some reason, like, the first rings basically just glitched out, and it's not like Kraken, because basically what glitched out is, like, I think it's the motor, or I meant the rotor, because like basically what happened was the artificial gravity ring, instead of like spinning, it was just like swaying side to side like a seesaw. It was a disaster. I had to completely rebuild these gravity rings because it just sways side to side instead of spinning. But I didn't include that because it's basically the exact same thing. Here we are. So nice build, and there we go. So yeah, the build is being built. Oh my goodness. So here we are building the build. It's nice. That's what I've got to say. It's nice. And here we are now building the engineering quarters, which basically has these cargo bays which have a bunch of the biggest batteries in the game. And then there are also all of the big what is it called, SAS wheels, because even though they are spinning, even though both rings are basically cancelling out each other's torque, it's still not very stable. So the more SAS wheels we have, the better. And I also added an ore tank, and that's completely aesthetic, because ore tanks on a space station are completely useless because they don't even work. So there we go. Nice. And we've got some hitchhiker storage modules and a large senior docking port at the end, like that we can dock large ships at the end. And here we are adding some Communitron dishes, 2 apparently, yeah, 2. where did I put them? There we go, at the back, at the engineering quarters. Makes sense enough. And 2 smaller Communitron dishes at the front, like that we can have maximal efficiency, maximal comm network. And I'm now putting some docking ports, which I attached to some small cargo bays. There we go. I'm now placing that ore tank. There we go. Bada beam, bada boom. Where's the docking port? It's gone. There we go. So now we are putting the little attachment points where we're gonna put a small passenger bay. I only ended up, yeah, there we go. I only ended up putting one, and then I put a docking port there. Now that I think of it, I should have probably just put 2 little passenger bays instead of just one, but whatever. And we're gonna have some solar panels, but first of all, I forgot to link them to an action group, and second of all, I think they broke because I added some girders to like strut the entire space station to the launch vehicle, and then I think some of the struts broke, some of these solar panels, but whatever. We've already got 6 massive solar panels which provide a lot of electric charge, and more importantly, we've got so many batteries. And here we are now building the transfer stage, or the ascension module, I should say, but the rocket. So it's quite a long time lapse, because it's quite a, I like watching time lapses of like space stations, because it's so cool. But just a rocket, it's like, okay, it's just a rocket, but just a space station, it's like, oh, look at all these big artificial gravity rings, and look at me placing these flags. And whilst you're here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that little notification bell to never miss a Kerbal Space Program video. Here we are now building the big rocket, and I mostly use vector engines, yeah, because vector engines have amazing gimbal, because this is a very unstable craft, like it's extremely unaerodynamic, so we want to have the best engines, and they have amazing gimbal and very high thrust, so, and they're also rather efficient. So there we go. Just gonna use a bunch of vectors and mammoth cytus and 2 big mammoth boosters next to the main vector booster, and I'm also using vectors for the upper stage. Now I know that vectors aren't very good for they aren't very efficient in a vacuum, but again, they've got good thrust and good gimbal range, so that's why I used it. And here we are putting the big girders, which I added struts to strut everything to the craft. Now I could have just like used regular strut, but it's quite hard to just like have a regular strutting everything, and so I just used big girders. And also these girders, I think it clips into, yeah, you can see it clips into the passenger bays, and I think it broke that solar panel, but whatever, it's fine. It's such a small bit that it doesn't even matter anymore. So here we are, strutting everything, just making sure that it's nice and strutted, so that it doesn't just like wobble during flight. And once I take all the struts out, the gravity rings are still quite wobbly, but unfortunately there's no fix, because you can't have struts added to rotors. And here we are now building the ssto, which is gonna basically carry all the crew to the space station, because for the launch, when we launch that big space station into space, it's gonna be probe controlled. Just first of all, it's more safe, and yeah, technically in Kerbal Space Program you can reverse flight, but just for the peace in mind that yeah, this flight is very realistic. So I added some of these. I made some of these SSTOs that will go to the space station, and also once it docks with the space station, it will actually be served as an escape vehicle. So in case there's like an emergency and we need to evacuate, then we've got this to go back to the space center. I could have just left it back at the Kerbal Space Center, but I was like, just for the peace in mind and just for my headcanon, I was like, you know what, let's have this be the escape vehicle. You never know, maybe there's a fire and everybody needs to escape. We need to be prepared. That's what I wanted to say. So there we go, it's a nice SSTO, and it's also a very good SSTO actually. It's very stable and it flies well. The one thing I will say is maybe add a little bit more oxidizer, because once you start using the closed cycle mode of the Rapiers, it then ends up having very little fuel. Like once I got docked, it had like 40 meters per second of fuel. So I would recommend, if you're gonna fly this, and I would recommend you just add a little bit more oxidizer, just because there are no nuclear engines on this, because it only has the capacity to go to low carbon orbit. So there. And I also forgot the most important part of this SSTO, which is a docking port, but I will add that later, but I don't think I have the footage. So there we go. And now we're putting the landing gears so that I can land, and I did do a test and it does land safely at the runway. So there we go. Now as you can see, I did add some little landing gears to those like tiny basic tiny fuel tanks at the end of the wings. Actually, in the end I basically didn't have them. Like when I did the launch, they were gone, probably because I loaded an autosave and they probably didn't save these landing gears, but we don't really need them because we're only really gonna be landing on flat terrain, so it's not a problem. And I'm back to the rocket because I made some changes, because this is actually attempt number 2, because I got to orbit and then I realized I didn't have enough delta V. I didn't have enough fuel, so I just added a bunch more fuel, and in the end we had enough fuel once, so I did the second launch. But so I did the first launch and I didn't have enough fuel. Hashtag mental death. So here we are now launching. 3, 2, 1, launch. Here we are launching this beautiful spacecraft, and we've got a good TWR, and we're now gonna basically speed things up. There we go, we are now in like sped up footage, which is nice. So here we are, and we have the engine sounds, cause I didn't time warp, so the engines didn't go. Usually when I do interstellar missions or like missions where I need to time warp, at one point the engine sounds just disappear, but this time they didn't. And I'm doing a very, very steep ascent, because the thing is that this craft is very unstable. So we want to try to leave the thickest parts of the atmosphere as fast as we can before tipping over, because if we tip over too early, then we'll basically we'll just like tip and just like spin around. So we want to wait until we're about 15 to 20 kilometers until we go to that 45-degree mark. And there we go, we are now launching. We've now moved on to the second stage, which also has vectors, this time only 5 vectors, but it's enough. And here we are now launching everything. So it's really nice. And there we go. It is swaying quite a bit, but then I just decided to point prograde to fix that, and here we are going to orbit. And I ended up going for 100 kilometers for this space station. Now it's not perfect 100. I ended up having 106 kilometers for the apoapsis and 100 for the periapsis, but who cares at this point? I'm like, Kerbal Space Program 2 is coming in not much time, so I'm not gonna bother too much. Like, Kerbal Space Program 2 is like coming, it's like coming like 2 months? Yeah, 2 months. Like, just get it done, and there we go. It'll be good. So yep, we've got a 106 for the apoapsis and 99 for the periapsis. So I did change a little bit of things, but I think in the end I reloaded a quick save and okay, I didn't reload a quick save, I just did things weirdly. There we go. There goes the thing, the girder structure, and here we are now getting ourselves good. So we're now gonna disconnect all the struts and we're gonna fire up these rotors. There we go. There go the gravity rings, and they're going much faster, but they're going, in the video it looks very fast, but that's because this is 4 times sped up, but actually it doesn't go that fast. And it's now time for the ssto mission. So let's put, oh, I missed. There we go. The ssto is ready, and here we are now launching the ssto. So this is a very good ssto for beginners, because it's extremely stable as an ssto, like so stable, like unbelievably stable. So yeah, it's very stable ssto. It can fly like very well. Good ssto for beginners. So just one thing, just add more oxidizer to make it better. And my encounter wasn't very great. I'm not very good at docking, especially in low curve in orbit. I don't do that very often, so I'm not very good at that. But yeah, in the end I managed to get a nice separation node, and I again used the simple method, which is to basically just like a point retrograde relative to your target until you're at 0, and then point towards a target, and basically that's it. But I couldn't use the method where you basically point towards the target, basically where, you know, like that method where you point to towards the target chip, and then the target chip points to you, and then basically you're in line with the docking port. Here I couldn't use it because first of all this is an ssto, so it's quite hard to do this method, because the docking port isn't aligned with the center of mass, and second of all, docking to a space station, again, the docking ports aren't aligned with the center of mass. So basically you can't use that method. I had to use RCS thrusters to get close, and it was quite annoying. Like, I spent a good 10-15 minutes doing that because I couldn't get, like, the issue is that it's really hard to get the docking ports aligned perfectly in Kerbal Space Program, because it's really hard to see how your docking ports are aligned. There are mods, but again, I don't like these mods, so I just like do just like that. And as you can see, I just a little cut right here. I reloaded quick save because the first attempt, well, actually, I got close, and then the Kraken took down the ship, took down the space station. But yeah, but then yes, what I wanted to say is that when like a ship gets close to the space station, the Kraken basically just like completely breaks the artificial gravity rings. But there is a fix, and that fix is to once you get close, once you get into physics range, which is 250 meters, I think, immediately initiate a regular time warp, not physical time warp. Physical time warp will make things worse, but regular time warp, like just time warp. So yeah, just like go in 5 times time warp for a second, and then go back, and then it should fix itself. So here we are now docking, and we are now very close. I'm coming a little bit too fast, and I missed the docking port. So here we are, trying again. So yeah, it's quite tricky to dock like this, because you can't really see how good you're aligned. But in the end I got it, and here we are going too fast, and then I moved, and then I crashed back. So here we are, and this is why everything is problematic. So yeah, I was saying this method is quite tricky. It's not the easiest, but yeah, just persevere, and here we go. Almost there. Oh no, I just missed it by a little bit, but of course we need to get it. Yeah, so unfortunately I underestimated these RCS ports. I thought they would be much more powerful, but then I realized that they weren't very well aligned with the center of mass, so it basically just had extremely low thrust and was extremely slow. But I got it in the end, and here we are now transferring all the crew into the ship. And I meant into the space station. And there we go. Transferring everybody into the space station. So, yep. Now, I am aware that this scene, like me looking at it from the preview screen, it's rather dark. So I'm scared that once I upload this to YouTube, it will be like unbearably dark. Because YouTube just naturally makes videos much darker. But I don't really have a fix. I really need to like... I'm literally talking to you on a Saturday, and this video is coming out on a Saturday. And I've got a lot of things to do. I need to go to my sister's house to do things. And I'm like, oh my god, what am I gonna do? And here we are now doing an epic stunt. Marvin Kerman, which is one of our engineers, went through the artificial gravity ring. So yep, getting that on my belt, under my belt. These epic stunts. As you can see, the gravity rings wobble quite a bit, but unfortunately there's no fix. It's probably because the space station is very long, and the gravity rings are quite far apart from each other, so which causes that sort of weird wobble. And as you can see, we're now doing science, just pretend. And now we are now gonna bring this to the Kerbal Space Center. Now I'm only doing this for completeness sake of this video, just to show that yeah, it can land at the Kerbal Space Program, at the Kerbal Space Center. So like that, I can say that in case of an emergency, it can safely get back home, and it is currently pro controlled, so yep. But really, I'm only doing this for completeness sake, because really, once I land this, I'm just gonna revert back to a quick save where everything is docked. And I am speeding this up, I think 6 times, because it is quite boring. And the video is about to end anyways, like 2 minutes left. Yeah. So here we go. Now doing our aero brake down to where is it? Down to Kerbin, of course. I'm probably suffering from Alzheimer's now. I can't remember where I'm going, but yeah. I'm going to Kerbin, and spoiler alert, I did land this safely at the runway, but yeah. So we are now doing our aero brake, and I did undershoot the Kerbal Space Center by quite a bit, so I had to use my engines. But of course, if we're gonna do this, we are gonna have a little bit of fuel left anyway, so whatever. I feel like that's an acceptable use of the Rapier engines at landing, because although I would rather just glide this, the thing is that maybe like the escape pod is like refueled just before the emergency, so like the emergency comes, it's full of fuel, we can get home immediately. So we are now, so yeah, we can see that I overshot by quite a bit, so I'm just turning on the engines. And here we are now, coming into Kerbal Space Center stretch, and I'm just intermittently turning on and turning off the engines. And here we are now coming down, brakes on, doing a little turn to be nice at the runway, and here we are, landed at the runway. So I'm now moving on to a real-time shot of the space station. So nice real-time shot of the space station. And whilst you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe. On the left hand side is a video for you, on the right hand side is a playlist. Goodbye.